I know this sounds insane, and believe me, I've tried to convince myself it was, but the memory, what little of it remains, feels colder than any grave. It clings to me, a phantom limb of a life that was never truly mine, or maybe was mine for just a fleeting, horrifying moment before it was all erased. You won't find any record of it, any proof of us, not anymore. But I remember. Or, at least, I remember enough to know what's missing. Quick challenge. Comment the first horror movie that ever scared you. Let's see who remembers the classics. It was late October, a chill already in the air that promised a real winter. Clara and I were on our way to visit her sister, a 7-hour drive that we'd optimistically planned to do in one go. Optimism, like so many other things, proved to be a luxury we couldn't afford. Around 9 o'clock, somewhere deep in the desolate stretch of highway between two nondescript towns, Clara started yawning so wide her jaw popped. We both knew it was time to pull over. The Golden Sands Inn sign was a faded, flickering beacon on the side of the road, its neon skeleton barely clinging to life. It looked like it had been forgotten by time, a relic from a bygone era of motor lodges. The paint on its single-story facade was peeling like sunburned skin, and the parking lot was a patchwork of cracked asphalt and stubborn weeds. "Well, it's not the Ritz," Clara chuckled, trying to sound positive as I pulled the car into one of the only empty spots. The air, even outside the car, felt thick and still, carrying the faint metallic tang of stale rain and something else, something I couldn't quite place, like old dust, but deeper, more acrid. Inside, the lobby was small and dimly lit, smelling faintly of disinfectant and something sweet, almost sickly. Behind a scratched formica counter sat a man who seemed to be carved from the very shadows of the room. He was thin, with eyes that held an unnerving stillness, like polished stones. His name tag, barely legible, read, Arthur. He didn't look up immediately when we entered, but rather, slowly, deliberately, placed a small, worn wooden bird he'd been carving onto the counter. The only sound was the low hum of an ancient soda machine in the corner. "Room for the night?" Arthur's voice was a low rasp, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Just one night, yeah," I said, trying to sound normal, though a prickle of unease was already snaking up my spine. "A double, please." Arthur's gaze lingered on us for a beat too long, assessing, before he slowly reached for a row of keys hanging on a pegboard behind him. His finger, long and bony, hovered. "Room 6, he finally said, pulling a heavy brass key with a large, plastic tag. "It's at the end of the hall. Quietest room we have." Clara gave a polite, strained smile. "Perfect, thank you." She nudged me, an unspoken, "Let's get out of here," in her eyes. The price he quoted was absurdly cheap, even for a place like this. Too cheap. We paid cash, wanting to leave as little trace as possible. Room 6 looked no different from the outside than the others. A dingy door, a single, grime-streaked window, but when I unlocked it and pushed it open, a wave of cold hit me, sharp and sudden, contrasting with the surprisingly warm evening air. Inside, it was pristine, immaculate, not just clean but sterile. The carpet, a ghastly shade of avocado green, was spotless, without a single stain or threadbare patch. The bedspread was crisp, the white sheets pulled taut with military precision. The air smelled of nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not even the lingering scent of previous guests, or the cheap cleaning products common in motels. It was a vacuum of scent, and it was deeply unsettling. Clara walked in slowly, her unease palpable. "Wow," she whispered, her voice too loud in the sudden silence. "It's sparkling, like nobody's ever stayed here." That was it, that was the thought, like nobody's ever stayed here. It echoed in my head as I pulled back the heavy faded curtains. Outside, the world was a black canvas punctuated by a few distant twinkling stars. No other cars were visible from our window, nor any other lights in the immediate vicinity. We were utterly alone. We tried to make light of it, calling it a hidden gem with ironic air quotes, but the joke felt flat. Clara unpacked, humming a tune that quickly died out. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the strange, almost slick texture of the sheets beneath my fingers. and pulled out my phone. My signal was weak, but eventually I coaxed it to load. Just out of morbid curiosity, I typed Golden Sands Inn reviews into the search bar. By the way, what's scarier to you, paranormal stories or true crime ones? I might add more of what you choose. The results were sparse. A few old Yelp reviews from years ago, mostly one-star complaints about leaky roofs and rude service. Then, something caught my eye on a local history forum. A thread titled, Missing Persons in Blackwood County. Any theories? One of the comments, dated nearly a decade ago, mentioned a couple, a young man and woman, who disappeared without a trace after checking into the Golden Sands Inn. No car, no luggage, just gone. Another comment added, "Yeah, I heard about that. Happened a few times actually. Always at that old motel on Route 17. Police never found anything." My blood ran cold. "Clara," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "come look at this." She walked over, her brow furrowed as she read over my shoulder, her breath hitched. "Leo, that's just a coincidence, right?" But even as she spoke, her eyes, wide and terrified, told me she didn't believe it. I scrolled further, trying different search terms. Golden Sands Inn disappearances. This time police reports, old news clippings from obscure local papers, and more forum threads surfaced. The stories varied in detail, but the core was always the same. People booked a room, often room 6, and were never seen again. Their cars were left in the parking lot, their belongings sometimes still in the room, sometimes vanished with them. It was as if they had simply ceased to be. No struggle, no signs of forced entry, no bodies. Just a gaping void where a person used to be. The police records specifically mentioned that in every case there was an eerily clean, undisturbed room 6. A sudden sharp click from the bathroom made us both jump. Clara let out a small shriek. I whirled around, heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing. The door was ajar, same as we'd left it. Just the pipe, I guess. I choked out, trying to sound calm, but my voice trembled. "We need to leave," Clara breathed, her eyes darting around the room, seeing its perfection not as cleanliness, but as a sinister emptiness. "Now. We just grab our bags and go." A surge of relief washed over me. Yes, that was it. We weren't trapped. We just had to get out. This was a creepy old motel with a weird history, not a prison. We could simply walk away. I grabbed my duffel bag, my hands fumbling with the zipper. Clara was already stuffing her toiletries back into her overnight case. The thought that we could just escape felt like a light at the end of a very dark tunnel. We gathered our things, moving with a desperate urgency, the silence of the room pressing in, amplifying the frantic rustle of fabric and the thumping of our own hearts. We were almost done. My backpack was slung over my shoulder, Clara's bag clutched in her hand. We reached the door, fingers brushing against the cold metal knob. I glanced back at the room, at the perfectly made bed, the unnerving stillness. A faint hum, like the distant vibration of a tuning fork, seemed to fill the air, almost imperceptible, yet it resonated deep within my chest. Then, a wave. Not a sound, not a touch, but a profound emptiness that washed over me. It felt like every memory, every connection, every echo of my existence was being stretched thin, frayed, then simply plucked from the fabric of reality. Clara, standing beside me, her hand still on the doorknob, froze. Her eyes met mine, not with fear, but a dawning, bewildered realization, like she was witnessing her own reflection slowly dissolving. Her features seemed to blur, the sharp lines of her face softening, the color of her hair fading into a dull, featureless gray. An agonizing, silent scream built in my throat, but no sound escaped. I could feel myself going, too, the edges of my vision dimming, my thoughts becoming hazy, indistinct. It wasn't pain, it was a profound loss, a deletion. When consciousness returned, it was not to the motel room, but to a place both familiar and utterly alien. I was in my own apartment, or what felt like my apartment. The sun streamed through the window, painting stripes across a rug I didn't recognize. The books on the shelves were wrong. The photos on the fridge were of strangers. My name, Leo, felt like a borrowed word. I reached for my phone, and it was a different model. The context list filled with names I'd never heard. Clara. Her name formed on my tongue, a raw, burning ember, but it brought no image, no memory of a face, a laugh, a touch. Just the echo of a profound, devastating absence. I am here, existing, breathing, but I am not me, not the me that remembers the golden sands inn. The world around me has no record of that night, no trace of Clara, no proof of the life I lived before. Sometimes, in the darkest hours before dawn, when sleep refuses to come, I hear whispers in the silence, fragments of other voices, other lives. I see fleeting images like old photographs glimpsed through a thick fog, a hand reaching out, a familiar smile, a shared glance of terror. I think they are other people's dreams, brief, disturbing intrusions into their sleep, memories, perhaps, of a life they almost lived, a person they almost knew, that linger like static on a dead channel, memories of us that Room 6 couldn't quite erase, scattered like dust across the minds of strangers. And I wonder, with a cold dread that never leaves me, who dreams of me tonight? And will those dreams eventually fade away completely? Every comment you leave gives this channel life. Write your thoughts below, subscribe, and join our haunted family.